Before capital ships lit up the void, starfighters were already in the fight. These were the workhorses of Old Republic warfare, fast, deadly, and everywhere. Squadrons clashed in low orbit and deep space, carving paths for invasions or tearing through retreating fleets. Most starfighters had no hyperdrives, minimal shielding, and relied on carriers to stay in the fight. But in the right hands, they decided battles long before the dreadnoughts fired a shot. Aurek-class Tactical Strike Fighter. The Aurek-class was the Republic's answer to fast attack starfighter combat, sleek, sharp, and built for speed. At just over 9 meters in length, it flew with a single pilot, dual laser cannons, and optional concussion missiles. Early models skipped the astromech but packed a hyperdrive, giving it serious range for its size. Nicknamed A-Wings for the Aurek letter, they were quick to deploy and hard to hit. Squadrons launched from Hammerhead cruisers during the Mandalorian Wars and held their own against aging Mandalorian craft. The design stuck. Aureks saw action from the Exar Kun War to the Great Galactic War, even surviving into the Republic's final centuries. Sith Interceptor. Fast, disposable, and built for war, the Sith Starfighter was the blade tip of Revan and Malak's fleet. Produced in massive numbers by the Starforge, these single-seat interceptors were stripped down for speed. No hyperdrive, light armor, minimal shielding. Cockpits had bare minimum life support, so pilots flew sealed in pressure suits. Armed with twin laser cannons and powered by a Rakatan twin ion drive, they moved fast enough to overwhelm better-built ships in raw numbers. They hit hard at Vanquo, Forost, and above the Starforge itself, swarming Republic cruisers by the hundreds. Basilisk War Droids. Basilisk War Droids were Mandalorian war machines built to intimidate and destroy. Seized from the Beliscan species and reforged by Mandalorian hands, these armored war droids became the stuff of legend. Mandos called them Bes-Ulik, Iron Beasts. Shaped like a fusion of predator and machine, basilisks came loaded. Laser cannons, pulse wave weapons, shockwave rods, and missile launchers bolted across the frame. Mandalorians rode them straight from orbit, dropping at terminal velocity and slamming into battlefield positions like living missiles. Later models had cockpits, but the goal was always the same. Hit first, hit hard, hit loud. Star Saber XC-01 Starfighter. The Star Saber XC-01 was an experimental Republic Fleet Systems fighter introduced during the Great Sith War. It featured something few starfighters of the time had, a built-in Class 2 hyperdrive. That made it valuable for rapid response missions, especially with Jedi pilots who could use the Force to compensate for its poor handling. It was fast in a straight line, nearly 1,100 km per hour in atmosphere, but it lacked agility. The 13-meter-long frame was sleek but difficult to manage, limiting its effectiveness to elite pilots. Jedi squadrons deployed the Star Saber against Krath forces during the Holy Crusade, using its hyperdrive to move independently of fleet support. It never entered full production, but it paved the way for hyperdrive-capable fighters that followed. Mark IV Supremacy-class Starfighter. The Mark IV Supremacy-class was the backbone of the Sith Empire's Starfighter Corps during the Great Galactic War. Twin engines, laser cannons, it was built for space superiority and mass deployment. These fighters launched by the squadron from Harrower-class Dreadnaughts, with each carrier fielding nearly 100 at once. They went head-to-head with Republic Liberators and Talons in fleet battles across the war, trading finesse for numbers and firepower. Sith Buzzard Fighter. Buzzards were droid-operated starfighters used by the Brotherhood of Darkness during the final stages of the new Sith Wars. They featured long cylindrical bodies with stubby rear wings and were equipped with hyperdrives, a rarity for their time. Pilots often decorated the noses of the ships with animalistic designs meant to intimidate and demoralize enemy forces. Buzzard saw action at the First Battle of Ruusan and other late war engagements, operating as part of the Sith's broader push against the Republic and Jedi. Davaab-type Starfighter. The Davaab was a Mandalorian starfighter active during the Mandalorian Wars. Details are scarce, but it served as a frontline space superiority craft, fast, heavily armed, and flown in packs. Unlike the iconic Basilisk, the Davaab was a more traditional fighter, deployed in organized squadrons against Republic fleets. It saw action across multiple campaigns during the war, likely escorting troop ships and supporting planetary assaults. Liberator-class fighter. The Liberator-class was a heavy starfighter used by the Republic during the Great Galactic War and the Cold War that followed. Designed for space superiority, it featured a rugged frame, forward-swept wings, and a rear vertical stabilizer. Armed with laser cannons and proton torpedoes, it could take on both fighters and capital ship targets. Liberators were deployed in bulk from Valor-class Cruisers and carried into major battles alongside lighter Talon-class interceptors. Heavily shielded and built to last, they formed the backbone of many Republic carrier groups. Blade-class Starfighter. The Blade-class Starfighter was one of the earliest Republic fighters used during the Great Galactic War. It was a basic design, compact frame, dual engines, and a forward-swept wing profile. Armed with laser cannons and light shields, it was outclassed by later models but played a key role early in the war. Republic pilots flew Blade-class ships in fleet actions and skirmishes, often from smaller cruisers or outposts, before larger carriers were fielded. Eventually phased out in favor of more advanced designs like the Liberator and Talon, the Blade still marked a turning point. The Republic was finally prioritizing space superiority at scale. Sith Escort Gunship. The Sith Escort Gunship was a heavy attack craft used by the reconstituted Sith Empire during the Great Galactic War. Larger than a starfighter but smaller than a full Corvette, it filled the gap between fast attack and heavy support. Its hull was blocky, with reinforced armor plating and multiple blaster turrets for suppressing fire. These gunships typically operated alongside fighter squadrons, protecting transports or hammering Republic positions in low orbit. They were also seen during planetary assaults, supporting dropships and clearing landing zones. Slower than frontline starfighters, but tough enough to take hits and stay in the fight. The kind of ship you didn't ignore twice. Sith Dropship. Sith dropships were troop carriers used by the reconstituted Sith Empire during planetary invasions. Designed for heavy assault, they featured thick hull plating, ventral landing gear, and forward boarding ramps. Armed with multiple laser cannons, they could suppress ground defenses during descent. These ships delivered Sith troops, walkers, and support units straight into combat zones, often under fire. Their role was simple: punch through, land hard, and unload fast. Used across dozens of battlefronts, from contested cities to dug-in Republic positions, they were a staple of the Empire's ground assault doctrine. BT-7 Thunderclap. The BT-7 Thunderclap was the Republic's heaviest assault shuttle during the Cold War, part gunship, part troop transport. Built by Rendili Hyperworks, it combined heavy armor, forward laser turrets, and vertical landing capability. It could punch through orbital defenses, drop into a hot zone, and deploy troops straight into the fight. Furay-class Imperial Interceptor. The Furay-class was a high-performance starship used by Imperial intelligence and elite Sith during the Cold War. Sleek, fast, and heavily armed, it blended starfighter agility with the durability of a light freighter. Dual laser cannons, shield generators, and a Class 1 hyperdrive gave it reach and punch. Unlike mass-produced fighters, the Furay was rare, reserved for high-ranking agents and Sith Lords. Its aggressive profile and folding wing design made it instantly recognizable in combat. It served as both a personal transport and strike vessel capable of independent operations deep in Republic space. X-70B Phantom. The X-70B Phantom was a stealth prototype developed for Imperial intelligence during the Cold War, and one of the most advanced ships in the Sith Empire's arsenal. It featured state-of-the-art cloaking systems, sensor jammers, and a Class 1 hyperdrive, all wrapped in a sleek, low-profile hull. The ship was designed for infiltration, surveillance, and surgical strikes, missions where being seen meant failure. Armed with concealed laser cannons and reinforced shielding, it could hold its own if forced into a fight, but its real strength was staying off the radar. Only a handful were ever produced. One was assigned to the Empire's top cipher agent, operating deep behind enemy lines. Fire Lotus-class Starfighter. The Fire Lotus class was a heavy starfighter deployed during the New Sith Wars, fielded by Grace Command, a breakaway faction led by former Republic Navy officers. Donated by Baron Lemaine, the ship was large, heavily built, and surrounded by shield foils that earned it the nickname Blossom of Death. Equipped with a hyperdrive and full life support systems, it was designed for long-range combat operations deep in Sith-controlled space. It wasn't sleek or agile, but it could hold formation, absorb punishment, and bring its pilots home. Used throughout Grace Command's campaign in Sith space, the Fire Lotus was a frontline platform in a war that left few factions standing. Krath Starfighters. The Krath cult fielded its own starfighters during the Great Sith War that supported Sith forces during the Krath Holy Crusade. Krath fighters emphasized speed and intimidation. The designs were often ceremonial, with blood-red hulls and Sith alchemical markings inscribed into their plating. They operated alongside Krath fleets and even Sith meditation spheres during early engagements on Empress Teta and beyond. Pilots were often Force-sensitive cultists trained in Sith doctrines, using the Force to augment their dogfighting. These craft faded from use after the fall of the Krath, but they were a key part of Exar Kun's early military strategy. Now, that's enough starfighter lore for now. Frigates, Corvettes, and support handled the roles the small guys and heavy hitters couldn't, screening fighters, escorting convoys, jamming sensors, and keeping the fleet running under fire. These ships came in all shapes and roles: patrol vessels, picket ships, medics, and electronic warfare platforms. Lightly armored, but fast and adaptable, they were the fleet's backbone when precision mattered more than brute force. Foray-class Blockade Runner. The Foray-class was a light frigate used by the Republic during the Old Sith Wars. Small, fast, and built for support roles. At 155 meters, it packed dual turbo lasers, medium laser cannons, and a Class II hyperdrive with shields strong enough to punch through contested space. But it had no fighter bays and wasn't built to operate alone. These ships typically ran in groups alongside Hammerhead cruisers, acting as troop transports, picket ships, or couriers. The Endar Spire, which carried Bastila Shan to Taris, was one of them, and like most forays, it didn't make the trip back. Thranta-class Corvette. The Thranta-class was the Republic's mainline corvette during the Great Galactic War, a fast, versatile warship designed to outmaneuver heavier Sith craft. At 300 meters in length, it shared visual DNA with older Hammerhead cruisers, but ran sleeker and lighter. 3 dual turbolaser turrets and a spread of smaller guns gave it teeth, especially when deployed in wolfpack groups. Each Thranta carried a full starfighter wing, 14 Liberators plus bombers and shuttles, and could transport a Republic battalion with Jedi support. It couldn't slug it out with a Harrower, for example, but it wasn't supposed to. Thrantas hit hard, moved fast, and didn't stick around. Jehavey'Ir-type Assault Ship. The Jehavey'Ir was a Mandalorian assault frigate built for ambush tactics during the Mandalorian Wars. Roughly 188 meters long, it acted as a light capital ship for the Neo-Crusaders, flanking the larger Kandosii dreadnaughts in fleet formations. It carried heavy missile batteries designed for brutal opening salvos, softening up enemy lines before the main assault. Turbo lasers or mass drivers likely added to its punch, but missiles were its signature. Jehavey'Ir means ambush in Mandalore, and that's exactly how it fought. Strike fast, hit hard, disappear before the counterattack. Shaadlar-type Troopship. The Shaadlar was the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders' go-to dropship for full-scale planetary assaults. At around 100 meters, it could carry up to 800 warriors along with assault vehicles, all packed into a reinforced hull designed to punch through ground fire. Once space was secure, these ships hit the surface fast. They deployed troops at Sirocco, Onderon, and dozens of other invasion zones, turning space superiority into a ground war within minutes. Mandalorian Dungeon Ship. Mandalorian dungeon ships were large prison transports used to hold Jedi and Republic captives during the Mandalorian Wars. They were early models of what would later become the Lictor class, measuring roughly 700 to 800 meters long. Each one was equipped with specialized detention cells designed to neutralize force-sensitive prisoners. At least one dungeon ship is known from the period, referenced in historical accounts tied to the Jedi Civil War. Dynamic-class Freighter. The Dynamic-class was a rare, modular light freighter built in small numbers before and during the Mandalorian Wars. Designed on the Republic world of Trancel, each ship was custom-built for flexibility, with a hull designed to support easy modifications. Stock models were lightly armed, with limited cargo space, but ample room for passengers and system upgrades. Its most famous example was the Ebon Hawk, heavily modified and used by both Revan and Mitra Surik during the Jedi Civil War and the Dark Wars. Though never common, its design influenced later freighters like the Corellian XS and eventually the YT series. Lethisk-class armed freighter. The Lethisk-class was a high-end civilian freighter produced by Aurek Industries around the time of the Jedi Civil War. Marketed as a personal transport, it was too expensive for most, ending up in the hands of wealthy Republic families or underworld groups like the Exchange. A limited number were sold illegally to crime syndicates, prompting a crackdown that saw several Aurek executives sent to the spice mines of Kessel. Although few saw combat roles, the class was durable and well armed for its size, and occasionally repurposed for smuggling or protection work. Axehead Frigate. The Axehead Frigate was a Republic assault ship used during the Mandalorian Wars. Unlike the traditional Hammerhead design, its bow featured a wide, horizontal extension which optimized planetary landings and troop deployment. The ship was fully atmosphere capable and designed for rapid insertion of forces. One Axehead frigate was used to deploy a revanchist Jedi during the battle for Essien as part of the Republic's response to Mandalorian advances. Defender-class Light Corvette. The Defender-class was a Republic corvette purpose-built for Jedi operations across the galaxy. Sleek and heavily shielded, it combines speed, durability, and independent range. The Corvette's design featured a forward cockpit module flanked by wing-like structures and large engines at the rear, giving it a sharp, aggressive profile. Though small by capital ship standards, it carried a full medical bay, training area, and briefing room, along with accommodations for Jedi and support crew. The ship was equipped with powerful deflector shields and enough armament to defend itself in both space and atmosphere. Ministry-class Shuttle. The Ministry-class Shuttle was a Republic personnel transport used during the Mandalorian and Jedi Civil Wars. Compact and well armored for its size, it was typically used for secure passenger delivery, especially for Jedi officers and high-value mission teams. Shuttles of this class were common aboard Hammerhead cruisers and inexpugnable command ships, and many were modified to handle both troop drops and diplomatic assignments. They were usually just equipped with basic blaster turrets and shields, but their reinforced hulls could survive light enemy fire and atmospheric re-entry. One of the most famous appearances was in the KOTOR era, where Ministry shuttles ferried Jedi across contested systems. Gage-class Transport. The Gage-class Transport was a heavy troop carrier used by the reconstituted Sith Empire during the Great Galactic War. Large, blocky, and built for mass deployment, the Gage carried hundreds of troops, assault walkers, and atmospheric landing craft designed to follow behind Harrower dreadnoughts in planetary invasions. Reinforced hull plating meant it could take a beating, and point defense laser arrays gave it some protection, with heavy shields keeping it intact during descent. When Republic forces encountered a Gage class in the field, it meant a full-scale invasion was coming. Moving on to cruisers and destroyers now, and these formed the core of every major fleet. They served as flagships, carrier platforms, and heavy assault vessels, capable of launching invasions, breaking blockades, or holding orbit over contested worlds. From the Republic's Hammerhead cruisers to the Sith Empire's Harrowers, these ships carried fighter wings, troop divisions, and enough firepower to shift the balance of a battle. Hammerhead-class Cruiser. The Hammerhead-class Cruiser was the Republic's most iconic warship during the Old Sith Wars, a rugged, medium-built cruiser built by Rendili Hyperworks. At 315 meters long, it carried a crew of around 300 plus 400 troops and was armed with at least 7 turbo lasers, including dual turrets and a bow-mounted main gun. Later models added 12 Aurek fighters and 2 shuttles to support strike missions. The bow's distinctive hammer-like shape helped stabilize the ship during atmospheric entry and planetary landings, adding real utility to its silhouette. Hammerheads were first deployed during the Great Sith War and later mass-produced in the thousands, with one rolling off the line every 10 days. They served at Koros Major, Sirocco, Vanquo, and even in the defense of Coruscant. Despite heavy losses at Malachor V and widespread defections to Revan's empire, the Hammerhead remained the Republic's backbone throughout the Jedi Civil War and beyond. Its space frame proved so durable that variations remained in service into the new Sith Wars, and its silhouette would inspire shipbuilders for centuries. Interdictor-class Cruiser. The Interdictor-class was a 600-meter warship developed by Republic CNR Systems near the end of the Mandalorian Wars. Built at Corellian shipyards, it was originally intended as a heavy support cruiser, but its defining feature was its gravity well generators capable of pulling ships out of hyperspace. That made it one of the earliest true interdiction platforms. Armed with 20 quad laser cannons, 4 turbo lasers, 2 ion cannons, tractor beams, and fighter hangars, it was well rounded for both fleet engagements and pursuit operations. Its wedge-shaped hull and raised command tower foreshadowed the aesthetics of later Star Destroyers. The class came online too late to serve the Republic. Only one, Leviathan, was completed before the war ended. Admiral Saw Karath defected with it, and the ship became Darth Malak's flagship. Interdictors formed the backbone of Revan's Sith fleet during the Jedi Civil War, leading blockades like the one at Taris and chasing Republic assets across the galaxy. Most didn't survive the war, but their design legacy lived on. Valor-class Cruiser. The Valor-class Cruiser was the Republic's premier capital ship during the Great Galactic War, a 500-meter warship built by Rendili Hyperworks and often referred to as a Dreadnought or D-class attack cruiser. It featured a broad, rounded central hull with multiple hangars along both flanks and a distinctive dorsal trench running beneath its elevated command tower. Critical systems were heavily reinforced, and its hull structure gave it solid performance for a ship of its size. It carried over 100 starfighters and bombers, 25 shuttles, a crew of 1,900, and space for 5,000 troops. Due to their high cost, Valor-class ships were typically deployed as fleet flagships or command vessels. Notable examples include the Telos, flagship of the 1st Expeditionary Fleet, and the Eleusis, which was captured during the Cold War. Terminus-class Destroyer. The Terminus-class was a frontline destroyer deployed by the Sith Empire during the Cold War and Galactic War. It featured a narrow, angular hull with a long dorsal superstructure and reinforced engine banks at the rear. The ship's design emphasized reach and responsiveness, suited for patrols, rapid deployments, and fleet support roles. Armament included heavy turbo lasers and missile launchers distributed along its spine and ventral surface, giving it broad engagement coverage in ship-to-ship combat. Terminus-class destroyers served in planetary assaults, fleet escorts, and long-range raids. They frequently operated in squadrons and were a constant presence in Imperial-controlled systems. Praetorian-class Frigate. The Praetorian-class was a 180-meter escort frigate built by Rendili Hyperworks before the rise of the Hammerhead line. It carried 2 light turbolaser batteries and 2 laser cannon batteries for defense, along with a hangar bay supporting up to 12 starfighters. A Class 2 hyperdrive gave it long-range patrol capability. It was designed for guarding convoys, screening larger cruisers, and holding defensive lines during fleet actions. Praetorian saw service during the Great Sith War, including the Battle of Koros Major. After the war, many were decommissioned and sold to planetary militias or civilian relief efforts, where they continued to operate as anti-pirate and support vessels. Rendili later sold the design to Corellian Engineering, which repurposed the hull into the civilian Class 6 bulk freighter, a frame that lasted well into the Galactic Civil War. Ajuur-class Heavy Cruiser. The Ajuur-class was a Cold War-era heavy cruiser that saw widespread use outside the Republic fleet, most notably by the Hutt Cartel and Mandalorian clans. During the Cartel's campaign to dominate Makeb, 30 Ajuur-class cruisers formed a blockade around the system, serving as command ships and enforcers. The design also appeared in Mandalorian hands, most prominently as the Spirit of Vengeance, flagship of Mandalore the Vindicated. Exact specifications remain limited, but the ship's scale and role suggest a focus on durability and fleet command. Its presence across multiple factions highlights its versatility during a fractured period of galactic power. Centurion-class Battlecruiser. The Centurion-class was a heavy battlecruiser introduced near the end of the Mandalorian Wars as a next-generation command vessel for the Republic Navy. Stretching over 1,200 meters, it was twice the size of the Interdictor-class and carried a full wing of 96 Sith starfighters. Its command tower was massive, with a bridge reportedly the size of a concert hall. Armament included heavy turbo laser batteries, ion cannons, tractor beams, and layered point defense systems. Despite its size, it was engineered for faster sublight performance than most warships in its class. A small number entered Republic service just before the Jedi Civil War, but most were taken by Revan and absorbed into his Sith fleet. These ships formed the core of his war machine. The Ravager, Darth Nihilus' flagship, was a wrecked Centurion-class salvaged after Malachor V. Another, the Tears of Taris, remained in service for centuries and was later refitted with Harrower components during the later Sith Empire. The Voracious. The Voracious was a starfighter carrier used by Zoddo the Hutt during his campaign to dominate the Grumani sector in 1032 BBY. It served as both a mobile headquarters and launch platform for Zoddo's fleet of Intruder-class starfighters and storm drivers, massive warships capable of generating artificial storms and floods. The ship's structure was unconventional, a large rectangular hull suspended inside a circular ring by force field generators. Its hangars could support zero-gravity maintenance, and its frontal dome housed a vast data processing center used to coordinate atmospheric warfare. Equipped with a hyperdrive, tractor beam projector, and anti-starfighter defenses, the Voracious was capable of both long-range travel and frontline operations. Now on to the big boys. Capital ships and dreadnoughts were the centerpiece of Old Republic-era fleets, command hubs, fire support platforms, and visible symbols of military power. These were massive vessels, often exceeding a kilometer in length, designed to anchor battle groups, carry thousands of troops, and coordinate full-scale invasions. They were all built to shape the outcome of major wars, from the Mandalorian campaigns to the Cold War with the Sith Empire. Whether Jedi or Sith, Republic or mercenary, every major faction relied on these ships to control the battlefield at scale. Harrower-class Dreadnaught. The Harrower-class was a heavy dreadnought deployed by the Sith Empire throughout the Great Galactic War, Cold War, and Galactic War. Built by Davaab Starship Manufacturing, it measured roughly 800 meters in length and featured a reinforced hull, layered shielding, and a heavily armored weapons array. Standard loadouts included turbo laser batteries, ion cannons, torpedoes, and missile launchers. It operated with over 5 internal hangar bays and carried a full wing of around 100 starfighters and bombers. A typical crew numbered around 2,400, with space for over 7,000 troops and support personnel. Harrower-class ships served as fleet flagships, orbital siege platforms, and long-range command vessels capable of projecting force across entire sectors. Inexpungible-class Tactical Command Ship. The Inexpungible-class was a massive fleet command vessel deployed by the Republic during the Mandalorian Wars. Designed by Rendirli Hyperworks and Vangevalis Drive Yards, it spanned over 3,100 meters in diameter, more mobile space station than Starship. Its disc-shaped hull was hollow at the center and housed thousands of personnel, a crew of 4,300 and 2,000 troops. Its standout feature was the Vangevalis Chain, an advanced coordination suite capable of directing over 60 Hammerhead cruisers in real time. The central command bridge used a vertical holodisplay chamber known as the Wishing Well for large-scale fleet projection. Armament was modest for its size, with a mix of turbo laser batteries, laser cannons, and tractor beams, supported by 4 massive thrusters for maneuvering. Only 6 were ever built due to their high cost and structural issues. One, the Courageous, was destroyed in 3,963 BBY. The rest served as high-level command platforms in major battles like Sirocco before being phased out in favor of Centurion-class Battlecruisers. Kandosii-type Dreadnaught. The Kandosii-type was the Mandalorian Neo-Crusader's largest capital ship during the Mandalorian Wars, a 1,360-meter dreadnought built for planetary assault and large-scale fleet engagements. Originally designed by the Fenalar species, the shipyards were seized by the Mandalorians, who repurposed the design and expanded production through their own manufacturers. Each vessel carried a crew of around 10,000 and space for 30,000 troops. Armament included heavy turbo lasers, ion cannon batteries, triple laser turrets, tractor beams, and 2 super heavy concussion missile launchers loaded with 120 warheads. Its complement was massive: 128 Davaab-type Starfighters, 8 Shaadlar-type Troopships, and room for Basilisk War Droids, enabling full-scale invasions from orbit. Despite its power, the ship's design had a known vulnerability. A well-placed charge near the aft section could disable its hyperspace navigation systems. Roughly 100 were constructed, and many served as Mandalorian flagships during key battles like Sirocco. Some were destroyed in actions, while others were scuttled after the war. Derriphan-class Battleship. The Derriphan-class was the primary capital ship of the old Sith Empire during the Great Hyperspace War, around 5,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. At 215 meters in length, it was small by later standards, but heavily armored and designed for planetary assaults. Its crew complement was only 25, but it could carry up to 850 troops, and its weapons included 6 auto blasters, several point defense cannons, and 3 heavy concussion missile launchers. Despite lacking in deflector shields, these ships were so durable that it often took multiple Republic warships to bring one down. They carried a limited hangar with room for about 6 fighters and 2 shuttles. Hyperspace travel was likely handled by Sith navigators, though detailed specs on propulsion remain limited. Derriphan-class ships served under lords like Naga Sadow and Ludo Kresh and led assaults across Republic space. Only one survived the war, Sadow's own flagship, hidden on Yavin 4. In later centuries, surviving hulls were repurposed by Sith splinter groups, serving as frigate-scale platforms in wars under Exar Kun and Revan. Invincible-class Dreadnaught. The Invincible-class was a massive 2,000-meter warship introduced by the Republic around 3000 BBY during the final Alsakan conflicts. Built by Rendili Hyperworks, it was one of the largest and longest-serving capital ship designs in galactic history. Though eventually outdated, it remained in active use for millennia. The class was heavily armored and constructed with early Dreadnought-era engineering, durable but slow, with limited automation and aging systems by later standards. After falling out of frontline Republic service, many were transferred to sector fleets. The corporate sector authority famously continued operating Invincibles during the rise of the Empire over 3,000 years after their original launch. Cal-class Battleship. The Cal-class was a large Mandalorian battleship used during the Old Republic era, most notably as the flagship of Mandalore the Preserver during the Cold War. Its structure featured a thick, angular hull with heavy armor plating and forward-mounted gun emplacements built for prolonged engagements and sustained bombardments. Specific technical details remain limited, but the ship was heavily armed and suited for fleet command roles. It also carried ground forces and assault craft, enabling planetary deployment. The most famous vessel of the class was the Spirit of Vengeance II, a successor to Mandalore the Vindicated's original flagship. It served as a mobile base of operations for the Mandalorian clans and was targeted in a major boarding action by Sith forces during the Cold War. Corsair-class Battleship. Corsair battleships were fast, maneuverable warships used by the Brotherhood of Darkness during the final years of the New Sith Wars. Despite the battleship name, they were smaller vessels, functioning more like picket ships or attack escorts alongside larger Sith destroyers and dreadnoughts. They supported fleet operations with flanking maneuvers, starfighter screening, and light offensive runs, often deployed in mixed formations. Known examples include the Rage and Fury, which fought in the First Battle of Ruusan in 1002 BBY. Ajuur-class Dreadnaught. The Ajuur-class was a Hutt dreadnought used during the Old Republic era, a heavy warship adapted for both combat and long-term occupation. Little is known about its technical specs, but the class was large enough to be converted into a fully operational mobile space station. The best example was Port Nowhere, a modified Azalis ship that became a hub for smuggling, piracy, and black market trade. While originally designed as a warship, Its bulk and modular structure made it valuable as a mobile base for criminal operations. Kiramud-type Battleship. The Kiramud class was a 752-meter Mandalorian capital ship used during the Great Sith War and Mandalorian Wars. Named after the Mando'ar word for killer, it was designed for frontline assaults and planetary invasions. Originally based on stolen Basiliscan technology, its structure echoed the armored look of Basilisk War Droids, later evolving into sleeker, more angular designs with side-mounted fin armor. Each ship carried 36 starfighters, 3 Shaadlar-type Troopships, and a complement of Basilisk War Droids for direct ground deployment. Armaments included 5 medium double turbo lasers, 4-point defense ion cannons, 2 heavy concussion missile launchers with 80 warheads, and 2 tractor beam projectors. Crewed by 1,200 souls with capacity for 2,000 troops and year-long consumables, it was fully hyperspace capable and equipped with a Navi computer and backup systems. Kiramud-class ships saw major actions at battles like Vanquo and Empress Teta, and were often deployed alongside Jehavey'Ir assault ships and dungeon ships as part of coordinated fleet operations. Eternal Fleet Warship and Flagship. The Eternal Fleet Warship was the standard battlecruiser of the Eternal Empire, a hyper-advanced vessel operated entirely by sentient Gemini droids. Powered by a unique sun generator system, each ship functioned as part of a tightly synchronized fleet-wide network. Destroying one during a combined attack could trigger a chain reaction, taking out the formation and anything in its blast radius. Each vessel was equipped with heavy turbo lasers, atmospheric dropships, boarding pods, and a hangar capable of launching starfighters. Neither Republic nor Sith fleets could match their precision, speed, or firepower during open engagements. They formed the backbone of the Eternal Empire's galactic dominance. The Gravestone. The Gravestone was a unique warship built by the ancient Ikasari to counter the Eternal Fleet. Buried for centuries on the planet Zakul, it was rediscovered during the Eternal Empire's rise and became a key asset for those resisting Emperor Arcan. The ship was powered by an experimental weapon core capable of disabling or destroying Eternal Fleet vessels instantly, bypassing their synchronization protocols. Though heavily armored and starfighter capable, its true strength was in its main weapon, a singularity-based system that disrupted energy and data across the fleet's entire network. For a time, it was the only thing that could stand against the Eternal Fleet. Sith Meditation Sphere. The Sith Meditation Sphere was a unique fusion of starship and Sith artifact. Crafted by the ancient Sith species and steeped in darkside alchemy, the ship wasn't piloted in the traditional sense. It was semi-sentient and bonded directly to a Sith master. Roughly spherical in design, it carried advanced weapons and shielding, but its true purpose was amplification. It enhanced the pilot's mental reach, allowing them to coordinate fleets, crush enemy morale, or project illusions across battlefields. It had no loyalty to the Sith Order, only to the dark side itself. Meditation spheres were relics of a forgotten Sith era, and by the time of the new Sith Wars, only a handful remained. Stormdriver. The Stormdriver was a capital ship deployed by Zotto the Hutt during the Republic Dark Age, designed to weaponize planetary weather systems. Fitted with atmospheric vaporators, each ship could extract moisture and trigger floods, storms, and torrential rainfall. Used in formation, they could overwhelm entire continents through environmental collapse. They were equipped with point defense systems to fend off starfighter attacks, but weren't built for traditional space combat. The first Stormdriver was used at Capital K, where it flooded Sith defenses into the sea. Zotto then escalated the campaign, using an entire fleet to devastate the waterworld of Aqualaris and threaten Sith rivals into submission. At Darknell, Stormdrivers created massive flooding across the battlefield, though the destruction of Zotto's flagship, Voracious, by Jedi Kara Holtz and Grace Command's Jen Devard broke his control over the operation. One Stormdriver was later repurposed by Sith Lord Daimon, its vaporators used to execute Zotto in retribution. Star of Coruscant. The Star of Coruscant was a super dreadnought deployed by the Republic during the Great Galactic War. Over 1,000 crew served aboard the ship, which carried experimental weapons and unlisted tech systems. Exact dimensions and armament remain classified, but it was one of, if not the largest Republic vessels of its time. During the Battle of Hoth, it was ambushed by the Sith Empire and brought down from orbit. the crash buried it deep in the planet's ice fields. Years later, the pirate group known as the White Moor found the wreck. They reactivated its power core and shields, turning the derelict into a fortified base beneath the surface. The hull had survived the fall, so had the systems. What was built as a symbol of Republic strength ended up as a fortress for raiders, and a frozen relic of a war that never really ended. Anyways guys, that's it for our list on old Republic ships. Let us know which ship is your favorite in the comment section below, and which ship you'd want to see more of perhaps in future Star Wars media. As always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.